The near meltdown shook people's trust in American technology and the development of a new domestic source of energy. By June, energy problems became a national crisis after the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, raised oil prices by 50%.
We were upset, we were frustrated, and we were, just didn't seem like anything was working for America.
Everywhere, gas lines grew longer and tempers shorter. The country was getting desperate. President Carter, attending a summit meeting in Japan, flew home to reassure the nation.
We were all exhausted. He scheduled this speech and then decided, I don't want to give it. I don't want to give it. And he called it off. We didn't know what was going to happen next.
What happened next came at the quiet presidential retreat of Camp David. The president, trying to restore Americans' trust in their government, invited people from all walks of life to share their thoughts with him.
Carter was trying something extremely daring, reaching over the elites and connecting again with people. Some people on his staff thought it was insane.
The president sits down. He had a yellow pad of paper, a pencil, and looked at this group of us who didn't know why we were there. He looked at us and he said, well, I'd like each of you individually to tell me what's wrong with America.
He listened to each and every one of us.
And 2 days later, the president spoke to the nation. It was destined to be known as the Malaise speech.
That the true problems of our nation are much deeper than gasoline lines or energy shortages, deeper even than inflation or recession.
What people were saying was, we have a wounded country, we have a spiritual crisis, a kind of crisis of morale.
We can see this crisis in the growing doubt about the meaning of our own lives.
I still am dumbfounded by that experience.
And I like this one particularly from a black woman who happens to be the mayor of a small Mississippi town.
I said, oh my Lord.
We simply must have faith in each other, faith in our ability to govern ourselves, and faith in the future of this nation.
The response to the speech was overwhelmingly positive. The president's popularity shot up 15 points. But what he had gained was lost 2 days later when Mr. Carter asked for the resignation of his entire cabinet. The intent was to start afresh, but the appearance was that of a president not in control at home or abroad. In September 1978, Jimmy Carter persuaded Anwar Sadat of Egypt and Menachem Begin of Israel to sign a peace treaty that ended 30 years of war. But not even the president's crowning achievement eliminated the fear that his idealistic foreign policy was no match for his enemies. By the end of the year, the Soviets had invaded Afghanistan, and Ayatollah Khomeini had trapped Mr. Carter in the White House. On November the 4th, 1979, word reached Tehran that the Shah had been granted asylum in America.
That morning, I looked out my window. Iranian students had been climbing over the walls of the embassy with photographs of Khomeini on their chest and yelling Marg Bar America, death to America. They made a beeline straight to my office.
The U.S. Embassy in Tehran has been invaded and occupied by Iranian students. The Americans inside have been taken prisoner.
I was tied up, blindfolded. I started to think about family and started to think about would I live through the rest of the night.
For quite a while, we didn't know that Barry was a hostage. When I first got the State Department on the phone, they were unsure of exactly what had happened. They weren't sure how many people were being held.
Week after week went by. Finally, at Christmas, the Iranians allowed a visit by American clergy. They let cameras in.
We saw Barry come out, and he had a big smile on his face, and we were kind of sitting there laughing because he was collecting all these oranges, you know, and fruits and whatever he could find. We all felt rather good because he looked good. Good to see you again. Little did we know that they had been kept tied up to chairs 24 hours a day.
The continuing crisis was punctuated with daily displays of hatred orchestrated for the American news media. Unless the Shah was returned to Tehran for trial, Ayatollah Khomeini refused to release the hostages.
At church, people would say a prayer for the hostages. Yellow ribbons was in my house, in my neighbors' yards, and people had yellow ribbons everywhere.
There were thousands of letters coming to the embassy. When I received a letter from Barbara, it was almost a religious experience. I'd take the letter, I'd put it down, face up, and then look at it for a while. It was this little snippet of their life. Read it once, then read it twice. Must have read it 20 or 30 times. But I couldn't get enough of it. One would like the United States to rescue you, either bombing Iran or possibly invading Iran, or the John Wayne syndrome. But I knew that was absolutely ridiculous.
April the 25th, 1980.
I was sleeping peacefully. The phone rang. I picked it up. It was Pat Caddell, the president's pollster, shouting, "What's going on? What's going on?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. You tell me." And he said, "Turn on the TV."
Late yesterday, I canceled a carefully planned operation which was underway in Iran. Two of our American aircraft collided on the ground.
I just remember being so blown, so stunned. Just so sick to my stomach. Here we are, the most powerful country in the world, and the images, the helicopters there.
There was no fighting, there was no combat. But to my deep regret, 8 of the crewmen of the 2 aircraft which collided were killed.
To think that 8 other Americans had given their lives, it was totally devastating.
I found an Iranian newspaper, and I translated it to everybody in my cell. We all sat there, glassy-eyed, and we didn't speak to each other, because we knew that other people died for us.
Of 1980. President Carter, still trying to negotiate freedom for the hostages, did not leave the White House to campaign. The humiliation of the lingering hostage crisis, combined with a deep recession, amounted to political disaster.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Enter Ronald Reagan, a Hollywood actor and 2-term Republican governor of California.
He was the epitome of America. He was the optimist, the can-do. Today is great and tomorrow is going to be better.
I aim to try and tap that great American spirit that survived several wars, survived a Great Depression, and will survive the problems that we face right now.
Ronald Reagan won in a landslide. But President Carter still hoped to free the hostages on his watch, negotiating for their release right through the night of Ronald Reagan's inauguration.
money is now being transferred into the depository account.
It was an amazing night. And just going hour after hour. And then in the morning when we thought we had the deal, and then the plane didn't leave.
Nothing concerning the airport?
I mean, the president's got to go get dressed, people got to get out of there because the inauguration's going to take place, and the plane is just sitting on the runway. It became clear to us they weren't going to do it.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
Minutes after President Reagan took the oath of office, the hostages were allowed to leave Iran. After 444 days in captivity, they finally came home.
Belief, disbelief, not knowing what to say, just, no words, just, tears and crying and hugging.
It was a very moving time, yes.
Broadway was so filled with confetti, I could hardly see my way through it all. And both Barbara and I were holding on to each other. It was one of those moments in life where you say, it can't get any better than this.
For millions of people, it seemed that America was back. The euphoria carried over into the next decade, where it joined with a new roaring prosperity that brought riches to more people than any time since the 1920s. And that's the next episode, On the Century, America's Time. I'm Peter Jennings. Thank you for joining us.